Welcome to our ISN training forum. In this session, we are delving into personalised CPD for teachers' growth and school success, sponsored by our partner, the National College, a leading CPD provider for international schools, offering a professional development platform used by over 1 million educators and 45,000 schools worldwide. Personalised CPD is reshaping how international schools approach professional learning. When educators take ownership of their growth and leaders empower their teams with the autonomy to design their own CPD journeys, professional development becomes purposeful, motivating, and transformative. In this session, our experienced panel will explore how to approach CPD and personalised CPD for educators and how this benefits all stakeholders, how educators can take ownership of their CPD journey, and how leaders can develop personalised CPD frameworks within their schools. So to start with, we are going to hand over to our keynote speaker for this session, Mark Leppard, MPE. Mark is the headmaster of the British school Al Kubarat in Abu Dhabi, an award-winning international school leader and global inspector whose distinguished career includes 7 outstanding inspections, including a current inspection that's pending at the moment, major school development projects, and national recognition for his lifelong commitment to educational excellence and student well-being. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Is it okay if I share my screen now? Would that be
Yes,
good,
please.
Simon?
Yeah, fab.
Right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. You've already had my background, so I'll go straight into why we use continual professional development and why we feel it's a smart investment in people. So my background is I've always had a passion for CPD and staff development, and I think it's a key factor for multiple reasons, which I'll cover. But ultimately, I think if a school invests wisely in all aspects of CPD, I think student outcomes are the ultimate improvement area. But I'm just going to talk through what we've done at the British School Al Kubarat over the last few years, and I'm going to go back to the background I'm going to explain is from COVID. So when lots of people were cut in and having to do that, we really looked at our school structure and we thought that it would be a time to actually invest heavily in CPD because people weren't doing after school activities. They didn't have break duties. It was very much a teach by the screen, come off. So we thought there would be more time. So we increased our budget by 300%, which was a bit of a risk, but I'll talk about the dividends of that coming off. So what I'd like to do is start with what does CPD look like at our school? It's personalised. And when I say personalised, the person who is undertaking CPD is in charge of where they want to take their development. There are parameters, of course, it's not a free-for-all, but we really try and ask that person to take ownership. As you are with students, if they take ownership, the outcomes tend to be better and more focused. So we broke it down into 3 areas. Quite often people will talk about CPD moving up the career ladder. So yes, we do have a leadership strand. Quite often we have support staff neglected through CPD because it's mainly focused just on the classroom. So we actually brought a tier in very heavily on our support staff, both support staff in the classroom, such as our learning assistants, but also outside the classroom, our finance team, our HR team, because we felt they, being well trained and supported and continually developing, will help the classroom eventually. And then the final one, which we sometimes forget about, is there's a number of great professionals who don't want to move up the career ladder and you really want to keep in the classroom because they're just brilliant at what they do. So we have a strand where it retains people in the classroom where they do action research projects to support the learning of the students. I did say at the beginning it was personalised, but although personalised and the person takes control, it is in line or aligned with our development plan. So the staff will look at that, think where the elements of the development plan will be of interest to them, where it will support the school, and that's where they take that ownership. So they take control in line with our development plan. The motivation aspect is staff are in control. They've chosen it. So we have staff who are undertaking, as I say, research projects. We have staff who are undertaking National College leadership courses. We have staff who are undertaking masters, even up to PhD. And I talked about the investment at the beginning. We heavily fund that for staff because we feel that's brilliant for staff retention. We do have a tie-in period, I'll be absolutely honest, of 1 or 2 years after qualification, because we feel that staff should give back a little bit. But it enables staff to take control and really be ambitious with their own learning. So it's a self and shared direction. So the staff member will feel that they've got in control of their direction, but it's also supporting the direction of the school through that development plan. And as I said at the beginning, it is a healthy investment. You cannot do this on the cheap. You cannot do it by cutting corners. But by doing it, that healthy investment shows to staff just how much you care about their development and making them the brilliant practitioners you feel they can be. And by wrapping CPD around them, enables them to just develop and thrive and then be ambitious for themselves, which ultimately goes into the ambition for their students. Now, how do we know that 300% increase in CPD, letting people have personalised learning, staff in control, how do we know that that works? Well, I'd like to talk through a little bit about that. So we undertake a really extensive staff survey that covers multiple areas across the school. But one of those is staff development. And we have for our survey, we have an 85% uptake by staff. It's completely voluntary. It is not run by the school. So we don't know who's done what. We only send the company we use, which is called A Great Place to Work. We use their system, so they send out the emails to staff. We get the results back as a cluster, and the feedback we've had has been that staff really value the CPD, and it is a reason why they join the school and stay at the school. So for me, the staff retention aspect, I talked about the heavy investment, but as we all know, large staff turnover is expensive, not just financially, but expensive within the classroom and students' learning. So our staff retention, on average, year on year for an international school, for classroom staff is 8%. Now, I think the average of international schools is around about 30% per annum. So to hold it at 8% for me is fantastic. So we bring in new staff with fresh ideas, around about 8%, but we're actually retaining 92% of our staff at the school, which for me means there's continuity. We can help staff develop, and it's just that stability, which I think is crucial, particularly on the international circuit. We have a number of staff going for a promoted post, both internally and externally, moving up to senior leadership team through our staff development. And I think that's a really healthy picture. We develop future leaders. So most of my leadership team, unless there's a particular skill we haven't got within the school, it's succession planning, and they are internally appointed. But they are taking on fresh challenges along the way. So it's not just because they've been here the longest, but their CPD is shaping where their next step is. And we're squeezing every bit of value out of that training for the school itself. And I think if you have really healthy CPD, and it doesn't mean about moving up the ladder, but people wanting to better themselves, I think it leads to a really positive and ambitious staff body. And ambitious can mean ambitious for the students in their classroom. It just doesn't mean self-ambition. So for me, the heavy investment in CPD, giving staff a personalised opportunity and shape around the school development plan, and seeing these results, it's been an absolutely fantastic journey for us, and something that I would wholeheartedly encourage as a leader of a school, to develop your school, develop your people, and ultimately improve the outcomes within the classroom. So I'm going to leave it there. I think that's a sort of a whistle-stop tour for you. But again, if anyone wants to get in touch about CPD, you've got my school in the background, and you know who I am. So please do reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing. I mean, yeah, 92% retention, that's an incredible statistic. Yeah, really kind of showing the value of what you're doing there, and how your staff are really responding to that. And I really like that idea as well of kind of educators being ambitious and modeling that to the students as well, and it kind of them being able to see that example kind of in practice. Yeah, thank you so much for that was helpful. Yeah. Okay, we're now going to jump into then our panel discussion. So I'd like to now welcome our other guests as well. So we have Damien Bachu and Jarrett Brown and Jamie Ganley also joining us here on the call. So if I could start with a quick round of introductions, if that's okay. Damien, would you mind kind of kicking this off for us and kind of giving us a little bit of background about you?
No worries. Yeah, hi. I really enjoyed that. Thanks, Mark, so much for sharing. So my name's Damien Batchu. I'm the high school principal at the United World College in Singapore. A really exciting place to work. I've been here about 4 or 5 years now, and before that, I've worked in the International Baccalaureate Office in The Hague and Dubai, in one of the big schools in Dubai. A lot of fun in Dubai. And I've also had some other interesting career winding jobs as well. So yeah, lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Jarrett.
Hello, my name's Jarrett Brown, and I'm the secondary principal at the ISA schools in Wuhan, China. And I've been at several places as well. I was in Qatar for a bit and Austria, but my last couple of posts have been in China, and I've really enjoyed my time here. But it's been really great to see a lot of different schools and how they do PD, and that's really driven a lot of what I've been doing here at my current school.
Yeah, thank you, Jarrett. And Jamie joining us from the National College.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Jamie. I'm the head of sales at the National College. So I've been in the education space of sort of recruitment, training, and other services for schools for the past 10 or 11 years. And I joined the National College 3 years ago, to launch our dedicated international platform and go through the merger with Blue Sky Education to bring together professional development with kind of appraisal, self-evaluation, and kind of the ongoing personal development journey, and linking those together. So great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. A fantastic panel to talk about this topic today. So we're going to jump straight in. Our first question is for Damien. We wanted to ask then, how can schools translate the idea of personalised CPD into practical systems and routines that work day to day?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So much of what Mark was talking about resonates in terms of there has to be a what in the CPD and a rationale and a clear value proposition for it, which I think has been made really clear. I guess one of the things to try and add to that maybe is in the terms of in our school, we tried to model a lot of the stuff that Mark has there. Well, we've ended up spending a lot more time on the how we offer it. And I'm sure that's the same with Mark, but I'll pick up on a couple of examples of that. So we were finding that, on my experience, quite evaluative models of CPD are not very attractive or not seen as desirable by staff. So that idea of a high trust model of personalized learning or personalized CPD had to be something that we wanted to center in the college. So there's no performance management. There's the structure is that we believe in you, we've recruited you, and regular check-ins, which are about connecting about one's growth. So CPD actually becomes one long dialogue of growth and coaching conversations. And we have spent a huge amount of time thinking about how we grow a coaching culture. We actually use cognitive coaching. That could be another question at another time. And that means when every member of staff is a cognitive coach, that's one of the things that we will invest in to keep them, and it's quite exciting to do. That they then get a platform to use that by supporting a colleague, not just someone who works for them or up and down a hierarchy, but across, to find out ways to grow. Now, that needs CPD and an offer, like the things Mark's talking about. We have things like higher education offers and things that people can get stuck into. But actually, it's the how and the culture of trust that actually feeds and fuels the offer, as it were. I'll probably say no more than that for the moment and maybe pick up again later.
Thank you. Right. I think, like you said, this is kind of built into this kind of wider discussion about how we do this and thinking about, yeah, not just the what, but the how. And it's really interesting, that idea of kind of removing that performance review and saying, you know, we trust staff, and kind of building their CPD journey from here. Our next question then is for Jarrett, and I think this will lead in quite nicely. So what does authentic ownership of professional learning look like for teachers, and how can leaders support it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and there's some really great ideas here today. I think one of the things is that the school needs to have its overarching goals, its self-improvement plan, and then the teachers, they need to be looking at their needs based off of the goals of the school, and thinking about how they're going to be helping the students. I really love that student-driven approach, and also from their own personal curiosities. I think that's an important aspect as well. What do they think that they need to improve upon? I would also say it needs to be something that's going to be active in their classroom too. Part of that action research that we would have, where they're experimenting in the classroom and they're learning from something that they can then share and develop in the classroom. I think also it's one of the things that maybe they're trying to look for PD that's directly tied to a problem that they want to solve right now. So that would be an important thing where they're talking with their mentors and working on something that they want to solve that would help the school, but also help them in the classroom. This next one, I think, is also an important aspect in China because we have multiple languages. And sometimes some of the PD that I've sent, teachers that have Chinese as a first language, sometimes they come back and it's not as it wasn't developed as well as what we were hoping for because the language didn't translate very well in the PD. So I think we also have to be aware of making sure to get the PD in a context that is available for the teacher in the right language. I'll give you an example. I was on a PD once where there were a lot of analogies to like rugby and the Beatles, and it was a very English US heavy. But there were a lot of teachers there that were from China, and you could tell the analogies just were not working for them. So I think when we talk about authentic ownership, we also need to be looking at PD that is relevant to the people that are going to be taking the PD. And my final thing with this is I think there needs to be obviously an opportunity to grow for those teachers as well, giving them those opportunities to move up in the school with that development with the PD. So also having like skill shares, being able to develop themselves as workshop leaders within the school, that helps them grow and want to become middle leaders and potentially senior leaders down the road. So I think those are some of the things I think that would really make it authentic.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think it was a really good point to kind of highlight the local context in which the delivery is kind of being given. So yeah, it was a really good point to raise, and also yeah, some really good insights there about how to kind of manage that skill sharing and develop staff as well, and what's important to them in that time and in that moment. Thank you. Our next question is for Mark. We wanted to ask, what are some of the key elements or design principles of a successful personalized CPD framework?
Thanks, Claire. It's really nice hearing from Damon and Jarrett. Like many of the things coming up, it's either I'm picking up as something new to take or reassuring that we were along those lines as well. So hopefully the rest of the audiences are feeling similar. Okay, so key elements or design principles. I think to give it value, you've got to give it time, and you've got to have that as a base principle. You've got to make sure people have time. It's not just bolted on. I think you've got to put time aside. It gives a strong message. I think it should be regular, not right, it's the start of the year, staff induction, let's do this, right, you've all had your CPD, off you go. I think it's got to be something that's continually happening. We call it continual professional development. The continual is, it should be on a daily basis, really. There should be opportunities. And I think Jarrett and Damien talked on that. We put a lot in that. One of the principles is it's not just a qualification, let's work towards this. It should be a continual opportunity to reflect, to visit other practitioners, to see good practice in the classroom next door to you. For example, we've had staff say, I'm really struggling with group work at a particular age. So we look across the school and find where someone's doing something similar and say, is there anything you can go and visit? So we give them time to go and visit classrooms. So I think it's got to be shared. It's got to have value to both the person whose CPD it is and the school. So that's that sharing idea. And I think it shouldn't be, it should be organic. You should be growing as a person. So I think that should feature in. It shouldn't be a one-stop shop CPD. So I think it's got to be a culture across the school that CPD is part of your daily job. So when you talk about the principles or designs, they're the sort of things we've talked about. And that's not me as head saying that, that's after discussions. I think having workshops and consultation with staff along the way while you're shaping it means it's going to be more successful if you can capture some of their input as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, giving it time, really key. And yeah, that skill, that kind of sharing of skills and enabling that opportunity for people to go and see great practice that's happening in school. You know, this person's really good at doing this. Have you had an opportunity to go and see them? And that also celebrates that educator as well. Yeah, thank you. Our next question is also for you again, Mark. So we're going to lead straight in and ask, how can reflection be made a living part of school culture rather than something confined to formal reviews or appraisals?
Yeah, I think it's Jarrett said about performance management. We don't have performance management. We have performance development. So we talk to people about their development, not how we are managing them or they are being managed. So part of that is how do you develop? Well, again, I'll go back to it. We need to give you time to reflect. We need to give you time to research. We need to give you time to visit. So we have lots of times where we speak to other schools and say, go out and visit another school for something that you are doing in the classroom. It doesn't have to be something that's going to tick a box for a qualification. It's how are you going to become a better practitioner in an area that you feel you can get better. And I think to do that, you've got to have a lot of trust so that someone isn't thinking, I'm not very good at this, I don't really want to say anything about it. We say, it's not that you're good or bad, can you get better? The best teachers in the world can still get better. In fact, the best teachers in the world always try and get better. So that's what we try and build in. So we try and say reflection can be reflecting while you're seeing someone, reflecting what you've seen, reflecting on your own practice. And we have conversations about it. So my leadership meeting, at the start of that meeting, I have a thing called a 90-10. And I've got a theory that 90% of the time we're dealing with 10% of the problems, and 10% of the time we only put 10% of our time looking at the 90% of great things going on in a school. So we have a meeting a section at the start of every meeting saying, right, let's go around the table and reflect on really positive things we have seen from students, from staff, from the community, and let's reflect on that. So that's not about CPD, but the culture of reflection is key to having a successful CPD.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see how all of those things are kind of interwoven and really creating that culture of feeling like there is that continuous kind of reflection in terms of development, but also of what's working, of success as well. Thank you. Damien, we'd like to ask, how can coaching be embedded as a driver of both personal growth and collective improvement?
Yeah, I think I alluded to the cognitive coaching piece. I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of all sorts of coaching, grow models and instructional coaching. We've chosen one that fits a high trust, like big autonomous sort of culture setting piece, and it's also helpful if we only have one set of language around how we talk about coaching and growth, which we found to be helpful. So we use cognitive coaching. The idea is heavily linked into that self-determination theory about like you are the best person to be able to determine how to move yourself forward. and you have the resources inside you to do that. And maybe you might want to speak to someone, a coach, cognitive coach, who can help you refine your own thinking. But you've got this. And fundamentally, we have to believe that the power is with that individual. Part of that trust model is not just leaving it, that it almost sounds like there's no controls or there's no expectations. So we do have high expectations within that model. We have a high expectation that they're all in on this, they buy into the culture. That's really important, because when colleagues are looking around at other colleagues who are not buying in, or cognitive not pulling their weight, or not feeling like they're into it, then actually that starts building up a toxicity, or a different sort of toxicity. The fuel for this model, as it were, where coaching is iterative but also regular, is high feedback loops. And the teachers have to create a significant amount of feedback for themselves. And we expect that. The best person for them to improve themselves is themselves, but they can only do that with feedback. And we've just said that we don't want that to come from the top down. It has to be driven. So we have to set structures for that. So I do expect, as a head, that they are systematically collecting feedback from their classes. I don't need to see it. It's not for me. But I will ask about it in my coaching. I said, hey, what did you see in your, when you spoke to your students? What have they identified? And we've done well. We're linking that to our school's learning principles. So we got, again, regular language on that. And so, again, I'm not evaluating them, but I'm getting them to evaluate and to reflect on what is going to be the highest leverage movement for them to move themselves forward. So those feedback loops are important. If they're leaders and they're in the school, they should also be getting feedback from colleagues. That can come from, as Mark said, popping next door or having colleagues coming into you regularly. Again, I don't want to do that. I don't mind popping in, but if they're relying on me to tell them how good they are, then we've lost. So they'll get that feedback, and then I'm most interested in the intensity and frequency of the feedback. If I know they're getting feedback and I know they're being coached, then I can just get out of the way. And so that's probably the piece around coaching is sometimes missed, that we're just sort of, hey, just find yourself a coach and everything will be well. I don't think that's enough. I think those expectations from the school and what that looks like in a culture setting is quite important too. So I communicate that at briefings. It will be things like, hey, how's the coaching going? Have you, or how's that feedback going? And I always say, it's hard, isn't it? It's like, it's always going to, it's not easy, but it's like, it's your feedback. You manage it if you want help. And we build and we build and we build from there. So yeah, that's some other food for thought.
Yeah, thank you. It sounds like you've really embedded this culture of that reflection and that continuous feedback, and that staff feel really trusted, and that they're able to kind of manage this journey themselves. And obviously they're working with others and looking at these kind of coaching principles, but there's high trust in the team, and that they're really taking this on. Yeah, thank you for those insights. Sorry, you're going to add a little bit more.
I was just going to say, the danger is I'm moving into that toxic, everything's perfect, and it's, there are exceptions, and there will be people who just don't want to buy in. So I don't want to this is exactly how it is, and it's do you know what, we're an imperfect school. We have generally this works, and it's quite exciting, and it's the culture we want to be in, but there'll always be outriggers, and there's sometimes some hard conversations. I'll put that there as well.
Yeah, thank you. And our next question is for Jarrett. So how can schools balance giving teachers choice and maintaining shared direction and consistency?
Great conversations here, and I think that's a really great question. One of the best PDs that I ever had actually was something that went for a whole entire year, and that was the middle leadership PD that we had. And the really great thing about this was that the organization set it up, and it wasn't just like a one-off PD, but we were having constant conversations with other like-minded middle leaders and senior leaders during that time. And we had a change project that we did during the course of this school year. And I think that was really great because the organization set up the system for this. but they offered the opportunity basically for the leaders to decide on what they felt like needed to be improved upon. And then we were having conversations throughout the whole entire year about, oh, this doesn't work so well. How can we improve this? And so we had to share and present this at the end of our PD that we did through the course of the school year. So I think it was really great because it provided choice within like a strategy that the organization had together as a group. And the other thing that I really appreciated about this as well is that they encouraged surveys, interviewing, sort of this idea of like a 360, like looking around your whole self, looking at the leaders, looking at the students, looking at the people that you work around you. And then we are sharing this learning publicly so that we're able to show off what we've come up with. And it's been an in-depth analysis rather than like 1 or 2 days of PD. And sometimes, that can be lost at sometimes because there's no Skillshare or something like that to share that with other people. So that was one thing that I really felt like was great in balancing choice with a shared direction from the organization that I was with.
Yeah, thank you. And great to hear about how that 360 kind of look at all of this and that constant review of it. That must have been really, that knowledge and that kind of having that insight from everybody that you're working with, kind of all of those stakeholders, must have been really powerful in terms of the development of the team. Thank you for sharing. Jamie, our next question is for you. So this conversation is sponsored by the National College, and we know that you provide a lot of training and PD for educators kind of worldwide. So I want to ask about how your materials support international schools and individual educators to develop a rigorous but bespoke CPD program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Claire. I think, as you said, the whole topic's very integral to our beliefs and what we do at the National College. And I think it's really interesting listening to the three of you talk about this as a discussion, and it makes you realize how close and how many similarities there are from an international or from an education institution into an ed tech company. Many of the same challenges and nuances, and that's always nice to hear. And I totally agree, Jarrett, on your last point about regular ongoing training and feedback. I think I once did this training where it said that as a sales professional, we forget 97% of what we've learned on a training day within 30 days. And I think that was just quite an interesting point as we think about what we can and should be doing. But onto the National College. Our kind of core substance of who we are is centered around our professional development library. We have over 1,500 courses, webinars, and podcasts on the international platform, covering all roles. So for leaders, for middle leaders, for teachers, for teaching assistants. And we often actually see higher than average use across the teaching assistants and support staff base. They seem to, in international schools, often, I think naturally, the financials of CPD is invested into those moving up or to senior leaders. And actually, this kind of gives learning pathways to all staff. And we cover learning categories across, pedagogy, curriculum development, working with special educational needs, looking at leadership, supporting well-being. And there was a really interesting or really nice story recently where someone through the National College in Thailand as a school in Bangkok, had been accessing all of our climate education content. And they had gone through and completed various modules around that, and then went back to their head teacher and said, I'm really passionate about this. I've done this training. Here's some ideas from the workshops I've done, from the worksheets, and this is what I want to do. And they're now got school-wide lead for looking at climate and sustainability. And I think that type of thing, giving learning pathways, enables people to learn and move in the direction they most want to. All of our content's on demand. It's self-paced. We have worksheets, as I said, so if you want to do them on your own, there's reflection points. If you do them in groups, you can workshop it and have discussions. And it can also be used as the basis to then focus on specific learning areas. So we've talked about coaching. We've got various coaching workshops and content. But actually, that can be a springboard to focus on an area that your school or that individual wants to work on. Through the integration with the blue sky. You know, I mentioned we merged and it's now called People Development under the National College. It means you can really tailor that CPD approach and look at individual needs from observations or learning walks, or however your school does that. It could be from coaching conversations. It could be from self-reflections. It could be from objective setting, that this is areas we want to focus on. And through that, you can really tailor the CPD, either from the National College, or you can plug in and look at other training opportunities, linking to those individual learning journeys and those personal development plans to work in a way that best suits that individual. But equally, again, linking to Jarrett's point, and I think, Mark, you touched upon it as well, as, you know, everyone's individual learning outcomes is one thing, but that's got to be tailored towards, you know, what's our whole school development priorities and what's our plan. And again, with our platform, you can look at what's the individual journey and how does that feed into the overall school outcomes and objectives we're looking at to develop middle leaders or to improve outcomes in maths or whatever that might be. So it's very much, you know, we have all these learning opportunities. We've got many ways to be able to track and evidence and evaluate in those different aspects. And then obviously through reports, a big aspect for schools is always going to be what's the return on that investment. So we've made it very clear for us to be able to report and track what's been completed, who's completed it, how has that made improvement in this or that area. And I think that's ultimately very key as well when we're looking at this as a wider topic.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. I mean, yeah, you've really kind of given us a really nice, succinct kind of overview of what the National College does and how it's able to really support schools and individual educators then in developing those CPD journeys, that so that they are aligned to the school's mission and values, but also that they create those kind of individual opportunities as well for educators potentially to look at bespoke ways that they're going to think about, you know, progressing their own career. Thank you for that overview. So we've got a couple of questions now that I want to kind of throw to everybody. So if you're happy to kind of jump in. So the first question was, what examples or case studies demonstrate that personalised CPD can lead to measurable improvement in schools?
I'm happy to jump in, if that's okay. Jamie's going to like this because it was actually a National College qualification and so on. So I didn't do it because you're here.
So. Mark.
Yeah. Obviously, National College, the MPQs, and had a project focus. So a person had an interest in reading habits of boys. They were following one of the MPQs. They did the project around that and took that on for, I think, nearly a year, looking at initiatives, looking at trying to change the reading habits. And we had it as a challenge within the school. So it aligned it was for the school, but the person had a personal interest. Plus, they were looking at gaining a qualification. And the end result was that area improved by a measurable percentage. It was reported at board level. And stories like that really help me because I can say to the board, look, we had a challenge on reading habits. It's improved through a CPD program that the person had interest in, that we supported, and they gained a qualification and the students benefited. So for me, that's a great case study. And I'm not just saying it's a National College, but that was the route they were taking at the time.
Yeah, a fantastic example. Thank you for sharing that with us, Mark. Has anybody got anything else to add to that? So any kind of case studies that they can kind of share from their setting?
I could go. So I think when we look at this and exactly what Mark was just talking about, like taking a look at what is the problem, taking a look at the data, having that data point as a starting point, and also taking a look at what the research says. Previously at a previous school, we had sit down and we looked at some of the good educational research. Like when we were talking about feedback, we looked at John Hattie and what worked for him. And so, you know, in education, there's so much research about many different topics that there's already been a lot of history with that already, right? So I think what we need to do is we need to take a look at what works, what is the problem at the school, and then after we put that improvement into place, did it work in our context? Or is there something wrong with our particular context that it doesn't work properly, and maybe we have to go back to the drawing board again and try something else. So that's sort of what I've seen works the best. Just having different data points and making sure that you start with a data point and that you end with a data point and see how much that you've improved.
Yeah, thank you. Damien, did you have an example to share?
Yeah, I feel like I need to add to. No,
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, you need to.
No, so, we had a really interesting. We have an evolving demographic. We have a lot of international schools do. Demographics are shifting. We have a lot more than we used to of English as additional language learners, and what we were finding on our longitudinal wellbeing surveys was that cohorts of the AL students were feeling more marginalized than others. And that became very obvious that that's a school problem to take on in terms of teacher efficacy and competence to support learners in the classroom. So it was a whole school strategy, obviously, but we wanted and hoped that that would permeate into teachers wanting to be the best teachers that they could. We were, again, we don't leave everything to chance. We were, making encouraging students, if that's how they were feeling in their classrooms, maybe that would be part of the feedback they might give to their teachers. We talk about those feedback loops. So teachers were finding in their feedback loops, yeah, look, we could make people feel a bit more welcome in the classroom. It's not helpful when teachers are not thoughtful about the language they use, as well as the speed and all the other strategies. So that's permeated through the professional learning and the personalized learning programs. We funded that as well, and there's opportunities if people wanted to do that and showcase in different ways. But we've then been able to track that across, again, the metrics, because we're doing the longitudinal wellbeing surveys, and year on year we can actually have seen that intervention has led to improvements in how people feel like they can belong in a classroom, and it wasn't high tech, and it was almost no cost. So yeah, a nice little case study in knowing we need to do something and having the tools and the structures in place to know that we don't have to do very much to nudge that outcome.
Yeah, thank you. I think what's really key here is everybody kind of sharing then how you're identifying what some of those key issues are, like Jared just mentioned, and yourself as well, Damien. What was the issue, and then trying to then track that and thinking about what you're implementing and the local context as well, and how well it's working. Thank you for sharing those insights and those examples then of that kind of measurable improvement and how you're managing that. Our next question was, how can schools ensure that personalised professional learning becomes a long-term part of the culture and not just a passing initiative? So I think we've spoken about this quite a bit, but if we've got any other kind of insights to share there about really maintaining this as this long-term journey, that would be great.
I'll just keep bouncing through. I think it's got to feel like, again, trust is a big piece here. And if it's just a one-off or the funding's there for one puppy for Christmas sort of stuff, then you lose trust in the system. So you're getting support from the board, or really to fund this and to believe in this long term, because sometimes people they're not thinking this, hopefully not on an annual basis, but it's, what am I going to be doing over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years? We've got to set the trust over horizon if we're going to get those benefits. Yeah, I'll pass on. I'll come back round if someone else hasn't thrown something in, but that trust and having that consistency is really important for me.
I'll build on that a little bit, if that's okay. I think Damien mentioned about over time. I think if you're looking at professional development, it's not do this by this date and then stop. It should be organic, so you're continually improving. So I think it should be fairly open-ended. One of the challenges, I think, is schools are different from other businesses. Some businesses are very much sort of KPI driven, do this by this time and then move on to the next one. My board won't set me KPIs because they want it to be continual growth. So if you've developed an area, well, why not continually develop that, but then join something else up to develop there as well? Nothing should really stop. You don't reach a point and say, that child is now fully developed, let's move on, or that I'm now a fully developed teacher. You continually grow. So I think that has to be a cultural aspect to it as well.
I think one thing in sort of is very much linked to that in our kind of stats we've seen on Blue Sky and people development is I mean, I use terminology objectives rather than KPIs or personal development plans, but schools all have different language and similar models. But historically, I think, every school would be looking at, okay, so this academic year, you're going to be focusing on this area, and you would do some training straight away. You would leave it for 6 months and then do some training at the end, and then gather some evidence and do this or do that. But we're seeing a huge increase in more dynamic timelines. So this term or this 6 weeks, we're going to focus on this. And then actually over 2 terms, we're going to be doing this, or over 2 years, as you said, Damien, this is our focus over this period of time. So I think by being more dynamic, it makes it more real and it makes it more versatile and becomes more, as you said, part of culture rather than just a tick box we do in October and then in June.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because that's something that is on our mind in our leadership team, in that we have historically too much annual planning, and we're looking at some middle leadership training, in sprint training, and sort of breaking traditional understandings of so yeah, it's really hard actually. I must come back and have a look at some of those tools. Actually, I was quite surprised you didn't mention your professional learning communities tools, because that's one of when I have used back in, not in my current school, but in the past, I felt that was one of the most powerful incubators and sort of inspirational points where things sprung out from, actually.
Yeah, we've also, on the Blue Sky side, there's a projects tool where you can also get kind of global, so it's not even just within your ecosystems of whatever your activity you're doing, you can access the whole data, the whole community, and people can access on various different projects and share, or and share best practice. But no, that's good to hear.
I would also say that we have to be okay as an organization with failure as well, because I think when we take a look at the growth mindset of PD, our hypothesis is not going to be 100% right all the time. So I think the important thing is, like, as a school culture, just making sure that we're okay with failing, that sometimes what works in some school contexts doesn't work in our current school context. So we need to be able to feel confident in being able to try things out, but also have an understanding that maybe we do fail and we need to try something else. So I think that trial and error is a really important aspect of professional development as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really key, and as Damien mentioned earlier, we're not saying that everything here is perfect. And it's that kind of constant reflection and thinking about how we're going to, look at what we've done and how we're continuously improving. I think Mark mentioned before as well, this idea, it's the first thing that you hopefully learn at school. Then also when you become a teacher, is that you're never the finished project. You're always trying to develop and improve. And there's always ways to do that as an educator. Thank you, everybody, for giving up your time today, for sharing your expertise, for your insights as well. So anybody who's watching this who wants to learn more about the National College or about the speakers, you can do that by following the links below. Thank you so much for giving your time. If there's anything anybody else wants to add that they feel they haven't yet, but they think would be great to add, then please do. But we're happy then. Thank you so much again.